So today at the Observing Fullerton podcast, we are interviewing Debra Stout. She's the Executive Director of the Fullerton Collaborative, a professor at Cal State Fullerton, and the co-owner of Dr. S Nonprofit Consulting. So, hi Debbie, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
So let's get started with your background first. So what is your role at Cal State Fullerton and the University of Arizona Global Campus?
I've actually been at Cal State University Fullerton for over 16 years now, and I have in the college, I'm a faculty member for the College of Health and Human Development. And in that role, that capacity, I teach classes in the Department of Child and Adolescent Studies and also in the Department of Counseling and Human Services. And mostly those classes are like research classes, and they're upper grade, like senior level students. I also teach the practicum class, so a lot of the students that are going to be going out there in the field of becoming a teacher, maybe a social worker. Those are all the students that are in that department. And then I also teach a leadership and personal development for our human services and counseling students as well.
Wow, that's an impressive.
Exactly. And then for the University of Arizona, I'm teaching online. It's the global campus. I've been there quite a while as well. And that role, I teach in the human services, the graduate level, master's and doctorate level students. So they are working on their doctorate degrees, so I help them with research as they prepare for their dissertation and kind of think about what projects they want to do. And then I also teach in like public policy and leadership classes as well for human service major students there.
So you've been doing this online stuff way before the rest of the world went online, right?
Exactly. I was doing online, and we got trained and had my certification like in 2000 and I think it was 5. So we've been doing online education for a while, and it has been really helpful when we transitioned in 2020 because it was like, I've been doing this for a while, I knew how to do it.
So this is just our personal curiosity, but was Zoom a thing before the pandemic too for you, or were you guys using something else?
Well, I do a lot of asynchronous classes, meaning that we come on at different times, and so we don't meet synchronously with the Zoom meetings. And so it was, something I think more so. I've done Zooms before the pandemic, but after, definitely more.
Lots and lots of Zooms.
Exactly.
So how does that hybrid kind of work with you? You've been doing it before the pandemic. I think a lot of people kind of got introduced to it after the pandemic. Some people go in 3 days a week and stay home 2, or vice versa, whatever it works out for them. But you've been doing the hybrid thing for a while now.
Absolutely. And I really enjoy it because of the flexibility and because I'm able to be in the community a lot more. But it also helps with the students, because we know that the students right now are dealing with so many things in their life, and it's a way for them to be flexible. And so that's one of the benefits of online education, is the flexibility that it provides for the community and for the students as well. There is definitely challenges because you don't have that one-on-one, like in the classroom you're there, and so my role and really my training has been building that relationship in the classroom. And so my students always say, you have the most interactive class, because that's what I need to have, and that's what we want to facilitate, because especially in 2020, 2021, we felt very isolated online. So building that community in an online form is hard.
That was certainly a difficult time, but you're really good at building community, which is shown through your involvement in the Fullerton Collaborative. You're the executive director now. So tell me a little bit about your role there and how you got involved.
Actually, we were always we've been a member for quite a while as our business, and then approximately, I'd say, 2014, we came. The executive director needed some support because she had to take back some of her time back in the classroom, and so I'm like, I'll help you out, especially because I wanted to get more involved in my community. Because one of the things I saw when I was teaching online is that there are so many great things happening, and then I get so involved with my courses and scheduling. I wanted to get more involved in the community, and so in 2014 is when I stepped up and I started supporting the executive director, mainly to support Faces of Fullerton, and also the events that were happening for the collaborative. And then the following year in 2015, the executive director had to step down fully, and so they offered me that position. And so since 2015, I've been executive director, trying to really support the work and the needs within the community as well. So that's exciting in my capacity there.
Right. 7 years as the head of the Fullerton Collaborative. That's truly incredible. And as somebody who's been to the collaborative meetings and I've interviewed, I was just joking earlier, like about half of the board. It's Fullerton Collaborative is such an amazing organization. So if you don't mind talking a little bit more about what you all do in the community and how people could get more involved with the collaborative.
Absolutely. So the Fullerton Collaborative really works to help build what they use collective impact, and be able to address the needs within our city in a way that is really successful, and what the research is also supporting. So we do meet generally once a month.
Yeah.
So we meet monthly, just to kind of build the collaboration, build the community aspect of it. And then we have our subcommittees, and that's one of the things that while I was started 7 years ago, was really investing in those subcommittees. And the subcommittees are areas and gaps that were identified by key leaders in the city. In 2014, they actually came together and we had a really kind of like a powwow or discussion about what are the needs in our city. And those 4 areas were homelessness. We definitely saw that we needed to look at that in 2014, right. 8 years ago, right? And so that was addressed. And so we have a subcommittee to really look at homelessness. How does the faith community work with the homeless? How does the business community work with the homeless? How can we work together along with the education? And then we also have the at-risk youth. So it used to be called the at-risk youth subcommittee, but then we're like, who wants to be a part of your team? Do you want to be a part of the at-risk committee? So we actually named it and really focused on the positive aspect, and they call it next gen, because they are the next generation. They are the really the future of the city of Fullerton. And so we meet with the key people that work with teens and youth in all the different areas, addressing workforce. We also address how to look for college and support them in financial, and also like how to get a grants and apply for college. And then we also are looking at doing a teen youth council in some capacity with the city of Fullerton. And then we also have health and wellness. St. Jude, we work with them and we provide support in how we can address the health and wellness in the city, not only physical but also the mental health, as we're seeing with the pandemic right now. And really the needs with our youth and even adults has really shaped and addressed those needs that we're seeing in high rates of mental health issues, suicide, but also use of drugs, and some of the pandemic that we're seeing with the use of illegal drugs in the city, and unfortunate deaths in the city because of that. And then the last area we do is early education. We really think that it's great to work with the elder adults, but if we start early on with the families, when they're before getting into kindergarten, how can we address those needs as well? And so there's some research countywide that we're bringing to the city of Fullerton. Yeah. So we do have a lot going on.
That's a lot.
Yes, and it's a great organization and to get involved with as well.
Right, it's a lot of imperative work that's needed in the city, and I always get so fascinated and just amazed by how much work the Fullerton Collaborative does and how passionate and enthusiastic all these leaders are about making positive change in the community. So I truly appreciate you personally for doing this stuff. So you mentioned earlier about your own business. It's Dr. S Nonprofit Consulting. Could you tell me a little bit more about how that got started?
Yeah. So when we've been in the countywide doing things for many years now. We're going on like over 30 years of just individually working in the county. And so when we started thinking about having a family, we're like, okay, we need to have a family. We really wanted to address the needs within our community, and so we pulled back a lot. And that's when we formed Dr. S Nonprofit Consulting. And that way we were able to help nonprofits, because people were coming to us saying, we need support. And so we actually created a business to help support nonprofits. And so in that role and capacity, we have helped nonprofits with research. A lot of them will come to us saying we have a grant or we have a board that we need to provide what we're doing. And so we'll actually help support them and do a research-based project, which is outcome-based for their nonprofit. We've also been approached for grants and having them to support. They have a grant in mind. They want us to help support writing that grant. and so we'll be able to help with grant writing, funding, fund sourcing. Also, we've had individuals that have a great idea and they don't know how to become a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And so we will be able to help them and develop them in the legal and all the avenues of becoming a 501c3, or maybe even dissolving their 501c3 in appropriate ways. Mm-hmm. So there's all different information. I co-founded with my husband, the other Dr. Stout, Dr. Mm-hmm. Debra Stout, and all of the resources. We have our website. Feel free to join us on our website at drsconsulting.org, and that tells you all of the stuff that we can help provide you as well. We're very busy, so we're very picky on who we actually support.
Yeah, it's a hub of everything you can know about nonprofits.
Absolutely, and on there you can also see examples of reports about what we're doing and who we're involved with in the city, and actually countywide as well.
Yeah. So, just hearing you talk about all this stuff, I realized just how much work you do, and I looked into some of your work, and it's just, you're such an incredible leader, mm-hmm. and you were named Leader of the Year by YWCA OC for this year. So, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned by being such an effective and efficient leader?
That is, when I was awarded that award, I always felt very humble, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I deserve it. There's so many great people that I work with that are amazing leaders, and so I think as I was, reflecting back then in our journey, we were actually approached a while back to write a chapter in a book with one of our professors at the university, and in that book it was about therapists and clinicians that give back to their community and their advocacy, mm-hmm. And how do they advocate beyond that? They say beyond the therapeutic hour. So when I reflect back on that, in my journey to get to where I'm at, it started back when I was 12. I grew up in a little teeny town in Idaho, and I moved to California, to amazing California, mm-hmm. The land of plenty. Mm-hmm. And then while I was here, my sister, who was actually 13, she was going to school, and at school a young man carried a gun, a .22 caliber gun, and actually shot one of her classmates and had a hit list of people that they were going to, that he was going to get. And this was long before Columbine, or before what we see now. So I was like 15 years of age when this happened, and my sister was actually on the list. That made me think, like, wow, this is happening in my backyard. This is happening now. Eventually, my family moved out of California, and they cited other reasons, but it could have been, I think that the violence that they saw and that my sister could have been a part of really scared them. So when I come back and think about that early experience, that really motivates me to who I am and why I am so involved in advocacy and making a difference. And so I started with the Department of Education years ago, working in their violence prevention, and I co-chaired this Ambassador of Peace Awards, and then eventually I was asked to be the chair of, with my husband, Debra Stout, the chair of the Violence Prevention Coalition of Orange County. And so within that capacity, I've been very passionate about my work because of my experiences, but also just seeing the impact in the community as well, and how we're able to change policy because of it, how we're able to really change how we view and work with youth in our community, not a negative focus, but more of a positive focus. So that really influences who I am as a leader as well.
I'm extremely sorry about the experience with your sister. I think as a generation that has grown up in active shooter drills, and that is something, it still doesn't get easier to hear about this.
It doesn't. Yeah.
It's just, it's a horrific reality of this country, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why when that happened, and then 14 or now 15 years ago, we started to thinking about having a family. Our daughter was born, and so she's now at the age where my sister was at, so it brings a lot of that full circle about making an impact in her community, my daughter's community. And that's why when I give back to Fullerton, I'm giving back to my daughter. Mm-hmm. A lot of the teachers that we work with, they have they work with my daughter in some capacity, or someone knows them. And sometimes my daughter thinks that she's cursed because she has two psychologists as parents, right? But really, our hope is to make a better world for her and for the youth that we have in our city.
And what a great hope. What a great, hope is also a form of planning. So what a great plan you have for the future. So what advice would you give to rising leaders, in the nonprofit sector?
One of the things I think about is, I think coming to the table. I think for rising leaders, it's often we think we have a great idea. Maybe you do have a great idea, but not coming to the table, not knowing who else is doing the work. I think is a critical mistake and a miss that can happen. So I encourage the new leaders to come to the collaborative meetings, for example. Know who's in the city that you're at. Raise your hand. Sometimes it's scary to be the only one that would be willing to do some kind of a meeting or whatever. So that's been my role, is that don't have the courage to stand up for yourself, and then also work together. I teach actually the leadership class at Cal State Fullerton, and so I have a lot of students that ask me that as well, like, what should we do as leaders, and who do we look up? And they have a project that they have to find a leader that they want to emulate, and they interview them. And it's one of the things that overarching that I see from the youth and from my students is that they love the need for relationships, and that I think a leader has to have that relationship with their clients, with their community, and with their team. And so that's one of the things that I switched on over the last 20 years, is really focusing on building relationships and connections. Hence, it's kind of like good fit with the collaborative, right? Because that's really all we do, is about relationships and building that community. But also to be able to hear what other people can say and work collaboratively.
And how about leaders in the academic arena? Because I feel like that's a bit more of a different. I assume it to be different. I think you would know better than the nonprofit world.
I think, especially in the academia, we see silos. And there's a lot of focus on our own research, our own expertise. And so one of the challenges that we do have is working collectively as well. And so I think as leaders in the field, it's good to reach out to others and connect with others as well.
Yeah, because you can feel, I think, very lonely, even as an undergrad, in academia, you're trying to do all these things and you think this is the only thing I have to focus on. But then when you reach out to others, you're like, oh, you're struggling with the exact same thing that I'm struggling in. Like that, I know it's so obvious, but I feel like we forget to do it so often.
Absolutely. And I see that on our campus at the university. We have one college that's doing this program, maybe around homelessness, and another college doing it around another. So why don't we work together?
Yeah.
Instead of having 5 different subcommittees, have one committee that works together collectively. And I think, it's really shifted over the last 5 years, and we continue to do that as well.
Yeah. So what do you recommend as, how do you communicate those kind of needs? How do you reach out? I feel like everyone's so busy with their lives these days. And I think because of social media and our constant need to just doom scroll, especially my generation, we don't have that kind of ability, I think, that is needed. Or perhaps we just need to train ourselves to do it. But how do you communicate, across campuses? How do you communicate across communities and kind of bring people together? Because I know that's a lot of work, but as somebody who has done it, what do you recommend?
There's different avenues, and you can come from the bottom up or the top down approach, right? And I've found that both are needed. And so working with the students and having them have their voice and say, this is what we really need, but also getting the leaders, the people that are the policy makers, the people that can make a difference and impact within the institution is important to have. And so that's why, even at the collaborative level, if you look at our board members, we have an amazing board that are doing some critical changes within our city, within their own avenues, but then they come together and they are open-minded and they're willing to work together collectively. So you need to be able to find those individuals in your community that can make that impact and make that change and bring them to the table. Make sure that they're invited to the table. I think that's the key as a leader.
Right, to bring all the people who can do all the work and are doing the work and put them together. I think as a leader, I feel like you need to kind of have that broader instinct of these are the people, this is what their strengths are, and this is what their weaknesses are, but if you put them together, they'll complement each other well.
Absolutely. Bring them both together. And I think social media is important to share that information. And we're trying to get that, out the message out there as well. But this is a community that we have limited resources, and especially, with what's going on in maybe the world and funding, and a lot of the nonprofits that are like worried about when they're going to get their next check. And so if we work together, we can realize that we can actually build a stronger voice and advocate for more funding for those different avenues as well.
Right. Yeah, that's truly incredible. So, you're the executive director at Fullerton Collaborative. You teach at Cal State Fullerton. You spend a lot of time here. You do a lot of work here. What is it that you love about this community that kind of keeps you going?
I think, we actually met I met my husband here, Cal State Fullerton. Now we're going on 28 years. And so I've met him on the campuses. I've actually had classes where I actually was a student and I teach in that class, which is really interesting. But just that memory of just the college community is really my heart. And it brings life. It constantly, like every semester, every 6 months, it seems like it just rejuvenates itself. I really appreciate the just the community aspects of everything. And like I said, with my daughter, when she was born, we wanted to give back to this community. And so I think the passion and just, the history of the city, but the people is what brings me, really to love Fullerton the most.
Yeah, the people here are amazing, some of the most generous, open-minded people that I've ever met in my entire life. Somebody who's lived in, multiple different places. I think moving here, automatically I realized just how well-knit the community is, well-connected everyone is. Like, it's such a big city, but it has such a small-town feel,
Absolutely.
So, it's amazing. So, who else, what other incredible humans should we interview on this podcast?
Wow, that's a great question. And you've done an amazing job, your team here, to interview some great leaders and also community members that are doing a big impact in our city. As I was looking at the lists and considering things, I know that Bev Berryman would be an excellent. She works with Crittenden Services, and right now she's gearing up for Santa and the Angel Tree Project that they give back to their community. She has many roles that she does have on her hat as also the Fullerton School Board member as well. I know that you mentioned like any of the collaborative members. If come to the collaborative meeting, second Mondays, 2:30 in the library, and you'll find a whole bunch of people that would be great interviews. But the board, especially the collaborative board chair, Leanna Fukuchi, she's taking a role with the business community as well. Downtown Fullerton is a great resource. We have our 4 subcommittee chairs. Helene Morris, who works for the Fullerton School District, and also helps support the board as well, would be a fabulous interviewee. She does amazing work with working with our schools and services with mental health services, as well as other individuals. Jason Phillips, he's a chaplain for the Fullerton Police Department, but also he is a pastor for a local church. And with that, he is the co-chair for the homelessness subcommittee, and working with the Hope Center would be great. Kelly Fritzl is the new executive director of the Hope Center. And then also Lisa McFerrin, who works for Fullerton College, is the co-chair. So any of the co-chairs, I think they are leaders in their right. They know what's going on. They know who to connect with in the city, and they have an amazing story that I think needs to be shared as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the recommendations. We'll definitely add them to our list and try our best to get to them next year at this point.
Exactly.
It's crazy how fast it's gone by. Our Halloween pumpkin is now our Thanksgiving pumpkin.
Yes.
Time really flies by. But really, Debbie, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experience with us. I think it's incredibly helpful to us, our team, as well as anybody who's watching this who wants to get involved.
Well, thank you again for sharing the time with me.